Hey guys! So today we're going to talk about Spout, we'll do some particles, and we'll look at the TouchOSC app so that we can use our phones to control Unreal. So the first thing I'm going to do is I've gone ahead and opened up a first-person template C++ project. If you want to use an existing project, that's fine. Just be sure to add in a C++ file in somewhere. And I have also already added the plugins for OSC and Spout. So for Spout, we want to use this plugin from LightAct. So this was originally forked from this plugin, which was the standard Spout Unreal 4 plugin, but as we can see, it hasn't been updated in a few years, so after version 4.18 it stopped working. So if you're using 4.19 or 4.20, or if you're beta testing with 4.21, you're going to want to use this plugin, although I think it only works for 19 and 20. So you're going to want to go ahead and download this, and you're going to want to, while you're at it, download the UE4 OSC plugin as well. Again, you're going to want to use a C++ project, and if you want to use an existing project that's a blueprint project, that's fine. Just add a C++ class anywhere in the content folder. So we'll go ahead, and if we look at how our project is set up, so this is my project. I've created a plugins folder with a capital P, and I have my OSC folder and my Spout UE4 folder as well. Now note that you want the folder that contains the U plugin. So I have the U plugin in both of those folders. And once you add these plugins in, you're going to want to close your project and restart, which I already did. And I have these plugins enabled. I also went ahead and enabled the Niagara plugins, which we'll be using later. And before I forget, the last thing we want to do is if we look at the Spout plugin and we scroll down a little, there's this example spout.zip. And what I did is I went and put that right inside of my content folder in my project so that we can go ahead and look at the example content. All right, so I'll bring that project back in. So again, I'm going to go into my example Spout folder, and I'm going to open up the simple Spout level. All right, so we have a cube, it's first person, we have a little billboard. All right, that looks good. And if I go ahead and play, it's our standard first-person shooter. I'm going to do Shift F1 to get my mouse back. But the magic of this is that we can transfer this to Spout, and Spout is a bridge. So if OSC is our bridge for data, Spout is our bridge for video frames. And as we can see, Spout works with lots of different types of software. We have processing, Cinder, open frameworks, the list, it's a long list. So I would encourage you to download this and check it out. If you're on a Mac, then you're going to want to use Siphon. So we have Siphon, we can look at that right here. So we have Siphon, but today, since I'm on a Windows, we're going to look at Spout. Now, once you've downloaded Spout, it's going to show up in your program files, x86, Spout2, and you're going to look under Demo, and we want to look at the receiver. So it's blank right now, and let's play our scene, and there we have our scene. Now, you might be thinking, what's the point? So I get my scene in Unreal in this little tiny window. That doesn't seem super exciting. However, this allows you to bridge to other applications, such as projection mapping softwares like Resolume, MadMapper, or Isadora. So I really like MadMapper. You can project onto seemingly infinite possibilities. And just to give you guys a little preview of that, I'm going to go ahead and open up MadMapper. And we're going to take this video from Unreal using Spout as a bridge, and we're going to send it to MadMapper. So here we go. So we're going to look on our generators. And if we look under Spout, there's our image. And ta-da! And then we could add maybe a quad, and we could warp our image. And again, this image is live. And we could get rid of that with the delete key. Nope. Or backspace. Nope, that doesn't work either. Well, that's all right. We have this warped quad. I like it. Looks good. And there's lots of resources out there for MadMapper demos, but this is as far as we're going to go with this tool today. So I'll go ahead and close that out. Now, how is it doing all of this? So if we go into our actors and into our simple Spout blueprint, we'll go ahead and open that up. I'm going to stop this for now. And first thing I notice is I have a few warnings. It says, please refresh node. And so any of the nodes with the warning, I'm just going to right click and refresh the node. No big deal. Okay, so Ventic, so it's giving us basically a bang if used to max every frame, and we have it going to our Spout receiver and our Spout sender. So we just showed the sender. We had the Spout receiver open, and we saw how Unreal was sending data and Spout was receiving it, but that means we could also go the other way around. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and open my Spout sender, which gives us this nice test video to work with. And if I look closely at my blueprint, it's receiving from Spout and it's setting the material onto the cube. So I'll go ahead and save, and there's nothing on my cube. So Shift F1 gets my mouse. All right, well that didn't work. So if I go into my blueprints, I can see that it's looking for the Spout name. And if I go back to my sender, I get that name right in the bracket. So Spout DX11 sender. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in. So Spout DX11 sender. Okay, and I will go ahead and compile and save. And if I hit play, now I have my video projected on the cube, and we can even see that it's projected on all four sides of the cube. So I can go over here and all four sides of my cube. All right. So that is how you can use Siphon. So if you have, maybe you have a live stream video and you could take that video, send it to Siphon, and then Siphon can send that video and you can use it as material on anything in your Unreal scene. Now you could copy this blueprint and bring it into your project, or there's always the migrate feature. So if you don't want to build your whole project in this existing one, you already have a project, you want to integrate Spout, you can always right click on this blueprint and under Asset Actions go to Migrate, and this is going to allow you to migrate everything you'll need to run that blueprint into another project. But for now, I'm going to stay inside of this blueprint. All right, so let's do some particles. So let's just confirm that we have our particle plugins enabled. Okay, I'm going to close this for now. And I'm going to go ahead and make a new folder. And what we're going to do is inside our folder, we are going to make a system. And this will have our mesh. And then we also need to make an emitter. So remember that with Niagara, we need both of these components. The system is essentially almost like an empty shell that can hold one or more emitters, and emitters is what's actually responsible for creating and manipulating our particles. So we're going to open up the emitter, and I hate this orbit mode, so we're going to take that off. And if we go into Windows Preview Settings, I'm going to uncheck Show Environment, and we have some lovely particles. So what I want to do is I want to incorporate a skeletal mesh and have my particles mapped onto a skeletal mesh. Unclose this. First thing is I don't want a spawn rate. I want them all to come at once, so I'm going to use the spawn burst instantaneous. Let's do, I don't know, 15,000 particles. That seems great. Okay, we got a whole bunch of particles, and if I were to play this, we can see that they swell up and then they just fall, I believe, at the speed of gravity. Yes, but I don't care about any of that. So I'm going to get rid of add velocity, and I'm going to get rid of acceleration force. What I do want, though, is I need a skeletal mesh so that I can map these particles to something. So I'm going to look for initialize mesh reproduction sprite. And I already brought in a skeletal mesh with some animations. You can use the defaults from Unreal or bring in your own skeletal mesh and some animations. So let's see, I have Allison. And if you get this issue, you can just do fix now. All right, there she is. And then if I go under update, I'm going to be looking for update mesh reproduction sprite. So if you're used to programs like processing or Arduino, you can think of particle spawn like the setup. This gets called once to initialize everything. And then we have particle update, which is like your draw loop, which gets called every time once it is initially spawned. And I'm going to also set this to my Allison mesh. All right, she looks great. I'm going to compile, apply, save, and just make sure she runs. Looks good. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and let's leave the lifetime and we'll keep the next loop duration as is, and we'll compile, apply, and save. Okay, looks good. And we've gone ahead and added her. I like it. And let's just go ahead, let's increase this time. So we'll make 5-second lifetime. Okay, sounds good. Now what we want to do is we want to give her a little bit of animation. So we're going to bring the system into the space. And we also want to bring in an animation. So I've already downloaded a skeletal mesh and animation, so feel free to do that as well. Two things we want to do with the animation. The first is in the details panel under skeletal mesh. We want to make sure that it's always ticks pose and refresh bones. And then we also want to make sure that visible is turned off. And we're going to use the animation as a source for where the particles are going to go. So if I look at my particle system, the problem is I don't have a place to set the animation. I really need an override parameter. So if I go back into my system, I'm going to add a variable under user. There we go. I'm going to add a skeletal mesh. And once I compile, we'll have that in our parameters window. So I'm going to set the skeletal mesh to our intro. I'm not going to set the source yet. I will do that in our scene. And now that we have this parameter set, I can link this to our sprite here. Oh, let's give it a better name first. So F2 to rename. And we can call this Skeletal Mesh. We're going to go ahead and link this with both of our sprites. And we'll compile and save. Now I have that set. If I go ahead and look, I have this skeletal mesh variable underneath my override parameters. I already have the mesh selected, and for source, you'll notice you can only select things that are already in the scene. I'm going to choose that animation, and now it's going to be mapped onto this animation. So we can save and play. Oh, there she is. Go walk over. And I have my beautiful particle animation. All right, great. So Shift F1 for our mouse. That's looking good. So one thing that would be nice is to add a little bit of force to these particles, to have them move. And one of our options is, if we go under Particle Update, we have Curl Noise Force. So I could go ahead and add this. I'm going to fix the issues. And we want to go ahead and add a float from curve. Now you'll notice it's a lot of force right at the beginning. However, if I go ahead and play this, nothing happens. So because we have this update mesh reproduction sprite, it's kind of overrunning this curl noise force. So we actually need two separate systems. One that is being mapped to our animation, and one where we can add a little bit of force. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this. And we can save and close our emitter and system for now. But I am going to add a new emitter and system. So I'm going to have a new emitter. I'm going to call this follow. And then I'm going to add a new system. We don't always need a new system for each new emitter, but in this particular case, it's going to be helpful. So I'm going to set up my emitter very similar to what I did the last time. I'm going to turn off orbit mode because I still really don't like it. I'm going to get rid of the spawn rate and add in that burst. And let's do 10,000 particles. That's a nice number. We're going to get rid of velocity and acceleration force like normal. And I am going to still use a initialize mesh reproduction sprite, and we'll set that to Allison. But instead of having the update reproduction sprite, I'm going to use the curl noise force. Let me just fix issue. There we go. And I'm going to want to use that float from curve. So if I go ahead and select this, it's going to show curves in the Curves tab, which we have right here. We can also find under Window, Curves. And what I want to do is, I don't want any force at the beginning, so I'm going to change this to 0. Now it goes from 0 to 1. Now this isn't 0 seconds and 1 seconds. 1 is the duration of a single loop. So I'm going to keep it at 0 seconds here. So I'm going to add another key and keep this at 0. And then right at the end, let's make this like 1,000. If I zoom to fit vertical, I can see the entire curve. All right, that looks good. Now, what happens when I play? So there she is. Oh, and there she goes. We also have this noise frequency, so you can go ahead and fiddle with that number and see what this looks like. Oh, I like that. All right, that sounds good. Other thing is, just so we can keep this different from our last emitter, I'm going to go ahead and change the color. And let's do this nice like teal blue. Okay. And so we have this nice teal, and then she goes away. Beautiful. So I have this system right here, and I'm going to add this emitter to my follow. Okay, great. But now I need a way to add this system onto the animation. I can't set the animation on this follow system because I don't have an update. I don't have one of our update reproduction sprites. So I need a way to tie the two together, and I don't really have that option in our details panel to say, hey, I also want my other super cool system. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a blueprint. So I'm actually going to remove her for now, and I'm going to create a blueprint class. So I'm going to create an actor, and we'll call this blueprint particles. So I'm going to go ahead and open up my blueprint. The first thing I want to do is I want to add the Niagara component. And we want to set the Niagara system, and we want to set this to our original system. This is what's going to have our animation, and this is what we're going to spawn a new system onto. I also want to add a skeletal mesh. And I don't want this, see how this is a child of this one? I don't want this. I want them to be independent, so I'm just going to attach this rather than have this one a child of the other. Okay, great. I don't want any of this. What I do want is I want to bring this in, and what I'm going to use is spawn system attached. And this is going to literally spawn a system and attach it to our existing system, the one that we had already shown. Now I need to choose which system to spawn. That's going to be our follow. And I need something to trigger this event. So let's just do a key press for now. So I'll do keyboard P for a particle. That makes sense. And if I'm going to use a key press, I want to make sure I have enable input. I want to make sure I can spell as well. Perfect. And we'll have that trigger on event begin play. And we'll just set that with get player controller. Again, spelling extremely helpful. Okay. So I'm going to compile this. So I'm going to press P and I'm going to spawn this system on this existing one that we already did. Now on my skeletal mesh, I'm going to go ahead and set this as Allison. And I'm going to bring this into the space. Now one thing I want to do is for our skeletal mesh, I want to use an animation asset and use the animation I was using previously. All right. And I'm also going to hide this. Okay, so let's go ahead and save and play. So let's go find her. Oh, where'd she go? There she is. Now if I hit the P key, it's essentially taking a snapshot of where she was in space and then going off into the distance. Now this is happening every 5 seconds because we have it looping continuously. So Shift F1, get my mouse back. So if I go ahead and look at this emitter, and I look at life cycle, I have 0 under loop count, which means it's going to loop forever. If I just say 1, it will only loop once. So compile, apply, save, and we'll play here. There she is. And I can hit the P key. It's going to disperse, and it's not going to loop until and then if I hit the P key again, which you'll just have to trust me, I'm hitting the P key, I'm getting this really nice sort of swarming away effect. And one way we can make this just a little bit cooler is I want to be able to run this from my phone. All right, so in order to run this from my phone, what I'm going to use is I'm going to use TouchOSC. So I'm going to go ahead and show you guys what my phone looks like right now. So we're using this app called TouchOSC. This app costs about $5. It's maybe one of 2 apps I've ever used or I've ever paid for, and it's easily one of my most treasured apps on my phone. And the first thing you need to know about OSC, if you haven't used it before, it's the open sound control and allows you to send data in between different softwares, including from your phone or a different computer to the computer that you're on. So similar to how Spout is used to send video from one application to another, OSC is used to send data from one place to another. Now, very important that your phone and your computer are on the same Wi-Fi. If they're not on the same Wi-Fi, this isn't going to work. All right, so you also need the IP address of your computer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to search for my command prompt. I'm going to bring that up here, and if I look for IP config, just type that in and hit enter. I'm looking for the IP4 address, so 192.168.1.5. I want to make sure that's in there. If not, I just click it, and I can change it right here. I have port outgoing is 8000 because that is the default for Unreal. And I hit the back button. I can change the layouts. We have lots of different layouts, but for now, I'm going to start with simple, and I'll hit done. Now we have all these different layouts right here, and this is going to allow me to interface. So I'm just hitting these buttons at random. This is going to allow me to interface with Unreal. I could also use this interface with a Max Patch, a processing sketch, Arduino, you name it. But for now, we'll do Unreal. So let's go back to our blueprint. So we're going to need to add remember we already installed and enabled our OSC plugin. So we're going to add our OSC receiver as a component. I'm going to go ahead and drag that out. And on event play, I actually want 2 things to happen now. So I'm going to go ahead and use the sequence. So first, I'm going to have it enable input, so I can still use the key press if I feel so inclined. And I also want to bind let's take that off. I'm going to bind event to on OSC receive. So in the background, whenever it is receiving some data from OSC, it's going to go ahead and hit this right here. Now we want to, so we have an event delegate. So we're going to go ahead and make a custom event. Now our custom event is giving us 4 outputs. So we have our trigger, so whenever this gets data, this will give us trigger. We have the address, which is the route, which we'll look at a second. The data, so what is it sending us? And of course, we can get the IP address from whoever is pinging us, which isn't really necessary for this particular example. So first thing is, it would be really important to know what the address is. So I'm going to go ahead and use the handy dandy print string. So whenever I get some data, I'm going to say, hey, just tell me what that address is so that I can do something specific on that address. So I'm going to go ahead and compile save. We'll do save current. And if I look at my phone, I'm going to go ahead and hit this key right here. And we can see we're getting that address. So slash, I'll hit it one more time, /2/push1. All right, so that makes sense. I am on the second window of the layout, and it's the first push button. Okay, great. So using that information, what I want to do is I want to use the, let's see, where is it? The switch on name. There we go. And so you might have lots of different routes, so maybe each push button does something in particular, and so I want to be able to adjust this depending on what route I'm using. So I want to be able to change that depending on what route I am using. So I'm going to go ahead and add pin, and then we can change our pin names here. And this is where you're going to want to put your OSC address. So I'm going to put /2/push1. So now this particular pin is only going to give us a trigger if I hit this exact route. So if I hit a different push button, this is not going to get triggered. And whenever I push this, I want to spawn the system attached. All right, I'm going to go ahead and do save current. And let's go ahead and find her. There she is. Now, if I bring up, I'll do Shift F1, get my mouse. If I go ahead and bring up my phone again, I'm going to hit this button, and I get that nice swarming effect. So now I'm controlling my Unreal with my phone via TouchOSC. It's a great day. And hopefully you guys make something cool with that. All right, thanks.